Almost 4 years ago today, A2A Simulations released their first Accu-Sim aircraft, the Boeing 777 Stratocruiser. Beyond the development of all these new aircraft systems, Accu-Sim created more feel for the aircraft and the flight. You could hear the strain on the airframe and also the squeaks and rattles as it taxied on the ground. The next Accu-Sim aircraft was the P-47 Thunderbolt, which introduced an all-new audio system. For the first time, you could open your canopy and hear the wind outside. Then came the Piper J3 Cub, where we actually added physics on the ground and in the air. Since then, A2A Simulations has released a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress,
yes, Captain, I've got him,
the Supermarine Spitfire, a new Captain of the Ship upgrade for their Boeing 777 Stratocruiser, and the latest, a P-40 Warhawk. After all of these Accu-Sim aircraft have been on the market, we finally found a way that we can bring a touch of Accu-Sim to almost every aircraft in your collection. And we've done it with a new FSX global enhancement we call Accu-Feel. Let's fire up FSX and I'll give you a quick tour of what Accu-Feel does. Now here we are sitting in our Microsoft default Cessna 172. Now let me just start by opening the door. Now the door's open and we don't hear anything. Now I disabled Accu-Feel for this test. Let me open the control panel and re-enable it. Now watch what happens when we simulate the wind that goes over the airframe, including the wind that is generated from the propeller. You're hearing the actual physical wind going over the aircraft. Our Accu-Sim customers have been enjoying this feature for years, and now we can put it on other aircraft. Okay, let's bring up the default Microsoft Beech Baron. Now, Accu-Feel looks at the characteristics of the aircraft, its dimensions, its engine type, etc., and builds a profile based on that information. Let's throttle up and taxi a little bit down the runway. Now the wheels are starting to turn. Accu-Feel has generated the seams and the bumps on these paved surfaces. Let's just go off onto the grass over here. Now what you are hearing and seeing is all dynamic. Brakes. Alright. Now these physics are automatically created for each aircraft, but you can customize them if you want. You can reduce your shock absorption for a firmer ride, or move it to the right for a smoother ride. The philosophy behind this control panel is we set it all up automatically. And beyond this, you have full control and you don't have to muck around with aircraft config files. You do it right here. Now, Accu-Feel also works for older aircraft. Let's pull up the DC-3. We have a slider here called Cabin Integrity. This basically speaks to the tightness of the cabin. Move it to the left and you get a loose cabin with a lot of rattles and squeaks. You can even make the aircraft sound like a bag of bolts if you want. You move it to the right, it's nice and tight. Since we're in an old DC-3, we'll move it to the left. We can even increase our wind volume if you want, and even our tire screech, which is nice to do because you can really hear those tires biting into the pavement. Alright, let's now taxi on the DC-3. It has that nice, big old, loose cabin sound. Okay, before we take to the air, I just want to explain that Accu-Feel enhances FSX at its core. And being a modular FSX enhancement, all of the aircraft, both third-party and stock, can benefit, and we don't have to touch any of the aircraft directories or their gauges in any way. This keeps things very simple from both the programming and also the customer's point of view. Okay, let's get up in the air in our default 172. Alright, we're up at about 4,000 feet. I want to show you what it's like to stall. You can actually sense when the aircraft is about to stall. Now we're just going to hold this attitude as our speed is bleeding off, and watch carefully. Alright, the aircraft shook and it stalled. Now the shaking happens from the turbulence coming off our main wing as it passes over our elevator in the back. And it can be quite violent, even on very mild Pipers and Cessnas. Now let's try this again. Now watch very carefully. I'm not going to stall the aircraft by listening and looking at the way the aircraft is flying. Now keep in mind, this is a default Microsoft aircraft. You see that? A little bit of shaking. A little bit of shaking. But I didn't stall. Now if I pull back a little too hard, a little negligent, there you go. I've got my stall warning horn. Now if we push the nose over and pick up some speed, as this air goes over the airframe at high speed, it starts to create even more sound and can even shake the aircraft as well. Now, this is not something you'd ever want to do in a real Cessna 172. But this feedback is letting you know that you're pushing it beyond its limits. Now let's load up one of the default Microsoft airliners, the Airbus 321. I'm sure many of you have noticed, even as a passenger on any of these airliners, you can actually tell how fast the aircraft is moving through the air just by the sound of the fuselage. Just listen. What's more obvious is when you start throwing things into the air, like the flaps and the gear. These actually create a rumble and sometimes even a groan. Okay, so let's drop one notch of flaps. Alright, and now let's bring the gear down. We're creating a lot of drag. The rumble that you hear is actually being generated from the wind traveling past that landing gear. The sound is giving you a sense of what's going on outside your aircraft. Probably the most challenging and interesting aspect of flying is landing. You, the pilot, have to master the aircraft and carefully place each wheel on the ground. You're not just listening to triggered samples, you're actually hearing audio that is modeled from the physics. And therefore you can really feel each of these wheels dig into that pavement. And let's drop this just a little bit harder so you can hear it. This is the same aircraft landing over and over again, and no two landings are the same. Let's bring it over here and let's land it on the grass. Beauty of simulation is flying wherever you want. Let's try to really make a nice, careful touchdown. All right, one more time. Let's try to really make this touchdown as soft as we can. That is why we do this. Accu-Feel supports everything from a Cessna 172 to a Boeing 747 and beyond. This Boeing is a giant. You can jump right in an extra, crank up the wind, feel the aircraft. You may like it loud, somebody else might like it soft. But the bottom line is just giving you more feedback to what that aircraft is doing. Alright, well that's our video. We look forward to releasing this product and bringing FSX up to the next level. Thank you for listening.